Right along with that, broken sewer lines, the water comes in that way. Septic tank not watertight. I think that's a bigger problem than we realize, especially when we start putting more complex. So we had, let's say, an old system that was a tank with a tail line. We never knew that was a problem with hydraulic loading, right? I mean, it goes right out to the ditch. But you put an aerator on it, you put a mound on it, you put a drip on it, guess what? Big problems start showing itself. We have one we're dealing with right now that's a brand new system. And the average flow on that system over a long period of time was like 360 gallons every day over the course of, it was almost half a year, every day. So the first thing, we go to these folks in this brand new house and say, you're using way too much water. Well, then we began to notice that during rain events, the flow rate was maybe 500 and some gallons.
547 gallons.
550 gallons a day when it rained. What's that tell you? There's a problem. And it's probably not the homeowner, right? So, and this is going into the mound, and the mound's bleeding. And they're upset, because why is my mound bleeding? Well, you've got 550 gallons a day when it rains. Something's wrong. So, water intrusion, septic tank, we believe in that case it's the septic tank taking on water. The soil's questionable, so it just migrates in through the tank. At that point, it'll drive you crazy.
Hey, Todd.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed on that particular system is the contractor had run a piece of conduit out past the tanks and into the trench, and it got deeper as it got closer to the house, so he didn't conduit at all. And the conduit was actually bringing water into the lift station. If you're going to do that, on the ends of your conduit, both inside the tank and out where you've stopped it around the wire, take some tar oakum, some sealant, shove it up in there so they don't have water infiltration. Because that conduit, when we first opened up that lift station, was bringing about 1.5 gallons a minute into that when we were there during a rainy period. So you want to watch things like that, because it's an open hole. There was shallow groundwater on that lot, and it was just funneling it right into the lift station.
Where were you monitoring the flow?
Good question.
Where were you monitoring the flow?
On these new systems, if you have a lift tank, you have an event counter. The event counter can tell you how many times the pump is actuated. When the pump actuates, and you know, because it's been calculated, the volume in the tank that goes out every time it actuates. You can say, I've actuated 10 times, and it was 20 gallons every year. I put out 200 gallons over the course of how long. So new systems on pumps have event counters or elapsed time meters, something that tells us how much water. Now, if you have an old conventional gravity system, have fun. I've dealt with it. You can't figure it out. But the newer ones, fortunately, that's why they're on there, because we've been, and you've been blamed too many times for a problem, and it was something else. So the event counters or time meters, whatever, are a nice thing to have to watch your flow. You can't always do that.
In that instance,
No, you can't do it here.
Wouldn't the Mark 1 eyeball work? I mean, you look there, and my God, if it's 99% clear, it's got to be infiltration.
Okay, that's sometimes that works. When you're looking at water that's ponding up or coming to the surface, if it's clear, you can make some assumptions, but you can't go too far with that. If it's clear, it probably is water from somewhere else. I agree with that, but you can't always tell that. It's a tool, but you can't always tell. Groundwater, okay, so we moved past the tank. What about the system? This was another one we identified as a problem. Field tiles. I can't tell you enough to watch the field tiles. Watch your spoil as it comes out. If you see tiles, stop and figure out what's going on, because they will cause you grief. You will be out there repeatedly if you've got tiles coming in and out of that system. I'll give you another example that happened to us, 2 years ago or so, out in Osnaburg Township. We had a system go in. It was a shallow system. It just took on tons of water. And you know the question, okay, where's it coming from? And I was out there. I vaguely remembered having seen next to a tree a piece of tile broken when the inspection was done. Didn't think much of it at the time. Then we come back, and I said, you need to dig right there. That's where I saw it. dug it up, bango, there's the tile. So the tile was bringing water into the system, but it was also under the system and taking water not as effectively, but it can take it away from the system. We've seen systems that had just standard leach system, maybe 900 lineal foot of lines. You'll get the first line half full of water, dry. You go down 3 lines down the hill, full. Because that tile is transmitting water from one line to the next line. It can drive you crazy. So watch your field tiles. If you can at all help it, take care of them at the front end and don't have to deal with them at the back end. Especially if you have an interceptor drain, that's where you're going to watch. That's your deepest component. You can miss it. It may be deeper than that, but keep your eye out for it. Springs, we try to identify all of that during the site evaluation before the installation ever takes place, but it happens. So you get, when we do that evaluation, we're looking for grasses on the surface of the ground, of course, water that's springing up. They tell you that there's a wet spot there, and if it's in the middle of nowhere, it'll beg the question, why? And we try to address that, but I've seen that happen too. The homeowner says it's your fault, it's my fault. It's spring. You can't do much about that. Let's all, we want to be careful to watch for it. Poor surface drainage, again, another thing we try to address during the site evaluation. We don't like to see systems down in the toe slope, bad place, too much water's coming across it. So we try to watch poor surface drainage from the beginning, but oh yeah, let's not forget grading. Probably on the mound systems, there's a few that have failed due to overuse. Probably the next biggest problem on a mound system is it's a dam. It causes a dam right in the middle of the yard if it's graded in a certain direction. So we want to try to deflect water away from mound systems.
Grading around tanks.
Yeah, and we've seen water funneling into tanks too. So get that positive grade away from the septic tank. And when it comes in, again, you'll go out there how many times? You don't want to go out there in the rain, right? So you go out there and you're, looks fine to me. Well, watch till it rains and it's all funneling into the tank riser. So it'll drive you crazy if we can hit it off at the pass at the beginning. That's Laura's graphics. I wouldn't. Water use. We got another good example of water use that just recently happened. We dealt with a small ice cream stand, and we designed it for a certain, I think it was 400 gallons per day flow rate on this little ice cream stand. Well, we didn't know that they ran the dipper well all day. So the flow rate, again, using the event counter, was, what was it?
700.
700 gallons a day in a 400 gallon per day system. And that 400 gallons peak flow, right? That's not average flow. So 700 gallons a day because of a dipper well. And if you've ever watched the ice cream stand, that dipper well is constantly running small stream of water. You'd never think that it produces as much. That's what, 300 and some gallons a day from a dipper well. So he had to basically change his whole operation, the way he does business, because of his dipper well. And see, where that comes from is it's on the other side. It's our food people downstairs telling you got to either have a dipper well or do it some other way. So you got this issue of sanitation, making sure that you don't got scuzz on the dipper when you're dipping ice cream, but you have to deal with the sanitation, at least he does. And then here on the wastewater side, we've got too much flow. So water usage is a problem sometimes. And you know as well as I do, you may as well not even ask the homeowner how much water they use. Don't even ask, because they won't tell you the truth, or they don't know the truth. The rare homeowner will say, I had one just lately out in Washington said, I use way too much water. Wow, that's the first time I've ever heard that. But otherwise it doesn't happen. So you really can't trust what a homeowner says about their water usage, especially on your gravity systems. They're very difficult to figure out. So again, we wanted to bring this up because this seems to be such a prevalent problem. Every one of us will pull our hair out trying to figure out how to fix that problem. I want to give you these dates, so if you have a sheet of paper available, we'll put these dates down for upcoming meetings. Oh, I'll give you these dates, and Laura wants to mention something about leach wells here. October 7th, 2011 will be our next meeting. Then December 9th, 2011. And we're going to try to, like I said, provide some online opportunities. We're recording this right now so that we can hopefully get it on. We're going to try to figure out how to get it on YouTube so that you guys can just click on there and watch it. We will probably provide, if you're going to use it that way, some brief test questions to make sure that verify that you did watch it. You just didn't turn it on and walk away from the computer. Those will be available.
One thing that I haven't been real good about making sure is done is looking at leach wells during the inspection for property transfers. And that's something that we're gonna now enforce. We wanna make sure that the leach wells aren't over full. Sometimes you can't tell if you can't see in them, and there's a lot of fall, doesn't back up into the tank, but it's full to the top and it's not gonna work when somebody moves in. So, I mean, I know sometimes you can't find them. We'll deal with that when it happens, but if there's a leach well, make sure you look in the riser, look and see how much water is in there. If it's close to the top, you might want to note that on your form that, hey, you know, 10 kids are taking showers twice a day, there's going to be an issue. And then also, if there is no riser, you want to note that, and I'll make sure that they open up the leach well if they can. You can probe if the leach well is not super deep to see if it's wet, just like leach lines. But most of them are deeper, so that's something that I just want to make sure you guys know and we're going to start making sure of.